and then we're gonna go back into our breakout room so we can have some discussion of this. So we looked at the framework for both listening and for reading. Both are in the interpretive modes. So the framework for both had the pre-listening and pre-reading task, and then the during reading and during listening tasks, so that it is active and not a passive activity, and then having a post listening or a post reading task where students are going to do something with what they read or what they listened to. So, keeping these things in mind, we are going to go back into breakout room spaces, and I'm going to put back into the chat the document that has the activity prompts on there. So, the activity prompts for this round, just wanted to make sure I got this in there before we go off. So the prompts this time around are going to be broken into two different areas. One is the listening activity. So choose a listening activity you've used before or plan to use, and look at how can you build in a pre-listening prediction. What's the language or the vocabulary students are anticipating or predicting? Then what is a during listening focus task that will help students succeed? And how can students summarize or use that information to express their understanding? Then the second one is the reading. So choose a text that you have used or will use, and look at the idea. Is there a genuine interest in a purpose for reading the text? Is it possible to break it down into smaller segments? And is there a possible follow-up or extension activity that students can do? So these are both working in the interpretive. So one is listening and one is the reading. So let's go back into our breakout spaces where we can engage with those, and the document with those is in the chat, so you can get those right away.
Do you need 10 minutes? Should I send
Yeah,
them
that's
10
good.
minutes?
Yes.
يا بس مثل ما كنت عم بقول نحن بكون عندنا بلان على هيدا الاسبوع، يعني هيدا الاشياء اللي عم تقوله قبل ما القصه تكون هو معلقه بالموضوع اللي نحن بنعطيه بهيدا الاسبوع. عرفتي كيف؟ يعني هودي القصص كلها نحن شارحينها قبل ما نعطيهم القصه. يعني انا ما بقدر افسركم اذا عم نحكي عن public school.
Okay, welcome back in, everyone. So hopefully you had an opportunity to share with each other. And just like with the interpersonal speaking and trying to find what that post activity is, the same thing ends up being a bit of a challenge when it comes to our listening and the text, because we spend a lot of time making sure students understood it, but let's make sure that we move beyond just understanding. But there was a reason for listening. There was a reason for reading that they're going to do something with it next. And that's when having a good collaborative relationship with your colleagues can be helpful because you can sort of have a bank of activities that you can do where students are able to do something else with it. And as I mentioned, when we do our listening and our reading activities, a good follow up is having a context for the interpersonal speaking and then for writing, which is going to be our focus now. So this is the presentational mode. Now, presentational can be writing or prepared speaking. That would be like giving a speech, but we're going to focus specifically on the idea of presentational writing, which is a really great follow up after listening or reading. So, when we're doing writing, we can help students to be very successful by providing frames and scaffolds to them. And so, this is what's going to help students move beyond that isolated single vocabulary and to really start creating sentences on their own at the more intermediate level. So when we talk about scaffolds, we're using sentence frames. That's what we're doing here. Saying, giving them a sentence with blanks in it. So I like to because. Now this already makes it a multi-clause sentence just by putting because in the middle. So this is a simple frame that we can use where students might know the individual words for activities like play soccer or read or dance or sing. And then they take that one word and they put it into this sentence, and it's because I like to dance, I like to sing, I like to play soccer, I like to play an instrument. So by taking their isolated single words or phrases and putting them into the sentence frame, they now can have a 9 or 10 word sentence, which makes it much more novice high and intermediate level. And they might not know all of the structures of I like to do something, but you're providing that here. So that's what we're talking about with these frames. What we can also do as they get more into the intermediate level is provide word banks categorized by function. So it's ways of connecting words in sentences or giving them vocabulary so that it is supporting them in their writing. And then graphic organizers. This has been so useful, I will say, more than anything else when it comes to writing in my classroom is using graphic organizers. And this is where students put their ideas together before they start writing. So I'm going to show you a couple of different examples of what these might look like. So this first one, what students are creating is on the bottom, the black and white version on the bottom. The one on the top is so that I can explain it. So this is if you want students to tell some sort of narrative or a sequence of events. Maybe they're retelling a story. So they start with these boxes and they're drawing this on a blank sheet of paper. You're not providing any of this. They put the main things that happen in the boxes. So here, those would be the yellow boxes, but they're just creating them like on the bottom. They're just drawing boxes and they put an arrow showing that this happened, then that happened, then this happened, the major events in a story. Once they have the major events, then in circles connected to the boxes, they put details that happen there. And so once they have this, they have the story laid out, the major events with the details, then they go to writing. And this makes it very manageable for them because they already have all the details, but didn't have to put it all in writing yet. So this could be something simple like what does your morning look like between waking up and going to school? And they could start in the boxes and they say, I wake up, I eat breakfast. The third box says, I get in the car. And the fourth box is, I arrive at school. So those are the major things that happen. And then they go back and they add details into each box. So the first one says, I wake up, and then they put a time there that they wake up. Or they might say, that somebody wakes them up in the morning. And then they say, I eat breakfast. So they put a detail what they eat for breakfast, or with whom they eat breakfast, or what time they eat breakfast, or where. And then the third box, I get in the car. Who drives to school? Do they drive? Does a parent drive? How long does it take? How far is the school from their house? Or maybe they take the school bus or they take public transportation. And then the last box is I arrive at school. They can say what time they arrive, if they arrive with someone, what's the first thing they do when they get to school. And so then if they write about getting up in the morning to going to school, they have all these details and in a very understandable way for them to write about it. Or they can retell a story. You've read a story in class as your interpretive reading, or they've watched a video of a story and they use this graphic organizer to retell the story that way. But the research on this is that when students create all of it, like you're not giving them any of this, they're drawing the boxes, they're putting the details, they're connecting the details from the circles. This is what helps them to really organize their thoughts before they start writing. And this can be as simple or complex. It doesn't just have to be four major events. I've had students do it where they have 15 major events with details coming off, or maybe it's just three, but always what I have in the orange or yellow boxes are the major events, and then the blue circles are always the details that add on to it. And so another type of graphic organizer is where students are doing a comparison. So suppose you're reading a story and there are two characters in the story, or there are two events that happen in the story. So the main characters that you're having them compare, you put those in the box. In here, it would be the yellow boxes. So they're just starting with those. And then anything that the characters have in common, you put in the detail circles between them, and they connect with the lines to both of them. And then on the outside of the boxes, those are the details that are different. And they're only connected to that one character because they're on the outside. And then when students begin to write about them, they have all these details there. And now they're just focused on the language that they're creating to put all of those details in context. So by having students use these types of graphic organizers before they write, they'll have all the details they need and they don't have to spend so much time in that creation process as they're writing. Because a lot of times what happens is, okay, write a summary and they don't have the details. But here they go into it confidently because they have all the content and now they can just focus on the language. So that's using some graphic organizers. And then one way to really build confidence with students is to start in your class. If students aren't doing a lot of writing, start with really short writing tasks that are done consistently so that students get confident in their writing and they just feel like it's something that they can do. So when we talk about short writing tasks, these are frequent very often, meaning two, three, four times a week, depending on how often you see students. And it's really building their comfort and ownership over the language. And these short intentional tasks encourage them to express with language without lengthy output. They can do this at the novice level. This could be writing a list. If they're novice low to novice mid and they just know the words for colors or family, at least get them started there. And if you're doing family, say choose three family members and write how old they are or write what their names are. That's a quick, easy, not challenging, and students feel comfortable and confident doing it. Because these are the moments that promote consistent growth and they make writing feel less intimidating and something that they're able to do regularly. So when we look at short writing tasks, this could be a summary. Like if they read something, say write a 3 sentence summary, or if they listen to something, or a personal reaction to the video, or a comparison, a prediction. You could put a picture up and they just look at a picture and they write what the caption of that picture would be. Or if you do nows when students are coming in the classroom, or exit slips as they're leaving. But anything that is a shorter amount of writing that's meant to build their confidence. So here's the framework. I like a good framework. So make sure it's level appropriate. Make sure it's at their level. If you are asking your intermediate mid students to write a list, that's too low. You want it to be something that's going to push them. If they are novice level students, you want them using their memorized phrases and add-ons and not multiple connected sentences. So make sure that it's in their range and it's on a single idea because you're only giving them a short amount of time. This is ideally 3 to 5 times a week to build fluency, and they're only going to spend 2 to 5 minutes on it. So this is not something that is a lengthy writing for them. You could have them do this in a journal. You could have them do it digitally on a digital document or a section in a class notebook, but it's something they're going to go back to regularly. And then there's always the question of what happens next. And usually, whenever I say do this 3 to 5 times a week, I usually get this reaction from teachers. And when I'm in the room doing a PD about this, I see everyone's reaction and they're like, I have so many students. How am I going to do this 3 to 5 times a week? That's so much grading. And the idea is with these, you're not actually grading them. Because the idea with this is students are just getting comfortable and feeling confident that they can write, and you're giving them prompts that they can respond to. So, what you could ask them to do is share with a partner after. You could collect them and check to see, oh, no students are using the correct form of whatever that might be. And it's a good formative insight for us as teachers. Oh, we need to spend more time on that. Or no students used colors when they were writing about this. Maybe they don't know colors as well as I thought they did. So even though you're not grading them, you're using it as your insight and your check into where students are. Or maybe it's language forms that they're not using the correct form of the verb. So it's a good personal check for you. And then what you can also do is use it for an expansion for longer writing. Like they have done 2 or 3 of these this week on different topics, and then you have them take all of them and then combine them into a longer writing. Where if they did it all as once at one time, it might feel very overwhelming. Some students might not feel they can do it. But when you break it down, it feels much more manageable to them as they're going through. So we looked at our 3 communication modes now, and with the presentational writing, it's a little different than the other 2 modes because interpersonal speaking and the interpretive mode, you can do it as the framework, the before, the during, and the after, and they're doing something with what they learned or what they listened to. Whereas writing is often used as that follow up activity for the interpersonal speaking or the interpretive listening and reading. So when we take these all together, we start to look at how are we going to be grading them? Because when we are providing feedback to students, I like to keep it as user friendly as possible so that it's not overwhelming. So when it comes to using rubrics, I have adapted what is referred to as a single point rubric. Now, like when you look at the Actful documents and there are 37 boxes with little words in them, and they use those for all of the rubrics, I like to keep it very simple. So if you look at this 4 point rubric right here, the 3 out of 4 is at level. This is the expectation. So this would be for novice mid. And so the proficiency level is novice mid. So that means it's a sentence that is chunked phrases. My name is, her name is, I live in, I am 30 years old. So that's novice mid. The content, there's accurate details that they've put in. Language control, often referred to as grammar. So these are sentence starters, infinitives, conjunctions, the spelling, so the control of the language. Vocabulary, new vocabulary from the current unit, but I also want to see previously learned vocabulary so that it stays fresh with students. And then creativity and repetition. This is where it's an opportunity for students to push themselves and take risks with language. And they don't just keep repeating the same structures over and over again because they know how to spell them and they know how to write them. And if they just repeat that structure and change out one word, it looks all accurate at the end, but they're not pushing themselves to take more risks with language. So you can see by doing that, students will get a 3 out of 4. And that, when you do the math, and you can do this your own way, but for me, it works out to a B plus. So it always leaves that option for students to go beyond. Because if students see, oh, okay, this is the expected level and it's a 3, I can do even more to get a higher grade and get a 4. So I am going to use new structures or try new structures or make some assumptions of what things might be. I'm going to make sure that I'm not just doing chunked phrases, but a little more than that. And if you look at each level, then the proficiency level for intermediate low is single multi-clause sentences and all the same, but just make sure that with our students that are ready to go beyond that we account for that. And each one of these rubrics is in the folder that I shared with you. So you can go in and you can change all of the documents as much as you want. It's up to you. It'll make a copy in your own folder. So you can change these, you can change the language, you can change what the proficiency levels are. But as you go through these, I wanted to show you that if you use this 4 point scale and the categories in my grade book, I do by the communication modes. So it's the presentational, the interpretive, the interpersonal. So then I have the score that they get out of 4, and I have it matched up to a letter grade because many of us still have to give letter grades, even though we're teaching with proficiency. So you could see here that it would end up being a B plus. But a lot of times you'll say, oh, it's a B or it's an A minus. But what does that really mean? But when you look at it on here, you can say, oh, it's that 3. So that means that students are just above meeting the proficiency level expectation, and it's novice high, and we know exactly what that is. So it allows for you to be very concrete about what students are able to do with language. And this is all also in the Google folder so that you can work with that. So it has all of the rubrics that we looked at here, and you can modify them and use them to, however it's going to work best for you. If you are in a school and you have the option of making your grading categories the communication modes, that is really, really helpful because it makes sure that you're touching upon those modes and not doing too much of any one. For the sake of calculation, I made them all 25% here. But for novice level students, I would make the interpretive much more, maybe 40 or 45%, because at that novice level, you want them to be listening and reading more and having more comprehensible input. And then average them out to 25, probably around the intermediate mid, where that would work best with that. Okay, so we have our grading. And so to finish up this section here before we get into all the fun CI activities that you could do in your classroom tomorrow, I want to spend some time on the idea of what we call success criteria. Now, regardless of what we're doing in our classroom, there are some fundamental, seemingly simple questions we can ask ourselves about our teaching. And the first question, when we're ever doing a unit, planning out a unit, what will be learned? That's our first question. What will be learned? Then the second question, the hardest question for any teacher to answer is, why is it being learned? So you say, oh, we're learning family. Why are they learning family? Not because it's in the curriculum, not because it's in the textbook, but why? And come up with a good rationale for that. And then how will I know that it has been learned? Like, what is your evidence there? And then the other hard question for teachers often is, so they've learned this. So what are they going to do with it? So these seem like simple questions, right? So we have what will be learned, that's the content in the unit. And then we have why is it being learned? That's the rationale. And then how will I know it's been learned? That's the evidence, usually an assessment. And then what will be done with what they've learned? The transfer. Now, success criteria is used generally in education, but for our purposes as language teachers and culture teachers, I like to start at the bottom of the list and say, what will students do? What do you want students to do? Because if you start with the content, then it's sometimes hard to come up with the rationale and then the evidence seems a little odd. But if you say, okay, I want students to be able to order in a restaurant, I want students to be able to navigate getting on the bus and getting to a location. So you say, okay, that's what you want them to do. So then we go back to the content and say, what language do they need to be able to do that? They need transportation vocabulary. They need questions. They need directions. They need to be able to read signs. They need to be able to read the name of the direction of the bus or which bus they're getting on or what the sign is where they need to get off. That's all the language they need. And then you go to the rationale and you say, why are they learning that? You go right to the end so that they can get on the bus and get to where they're going. And then you have an assessment where they're showing they're able to do that. So if you start with what you want them to do and then figure out the content, it makes a lot more sense than if you start with the content and then try to find something that they're going to do with it. So what I would like you to do is take a few minutes and think about a unit you have coming up and think first of what maybe it's a unit you've already taught or one you're going to teach. And as you move forward, you might change the unit based on these questions. But what will be learned? What's the content of this unit? And then why is it being learned? And if you can't come up with a great reason for why it's being learned, then maybe you need to think about, do I add on to that content? Do I modify that content? Or maybe it's not useful content. But what is being learned? Why is it being learned? And then how will you know it's been learned? So, what's the evidence? What's your assessment going to look like? And then, what will students do with what they've learned? And if you get to the end and you think, I don't know that students will use this content very much. Then go back to the content and rethink it. So, this is an opportunity to really look at we're not just teaching because it's in our list of things to teach, but it actually has a benefit to our students. So, what will be learned? Why? How will you know they've learned it? And what will they do with it? So, I would like you to take a couple of minutes with this to answer these for yourself. And then we are going to go into breakout spaces for probably another 10 minutes or so. So we can just go right into the breakout spaces and then you can share out with each other and have this conversation because you might get some good answers that you weren't even anticipating for your own units. So, what's being learned? Why? How do you know it's been learned? And what are students going to do with it? Okay, so let's go into our breakout spaces for about 10 minutes and talk about our success criteria. What, why, how do you know? What are they going to do with it?
Do you have the activity for Joshua in the Google Drive?
So I just put it in the broadcast to
Okay.
the groups.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see.
We were talking about the lesson and how we have I put like in the like a tree and I put core value for all our lessons.
Okay, friends, welcome back. So, could you quickly put in the chat, what was the most challenging question to answer? Is it the content? Is it the reason why they're learning it? Is it the assessment of it, or what they're going to do with it? What was the most challenging
Uh,
question to take
what
on?
will we do with it? It
See
is.
some why, what they'll do with the learning,
Yep.
reason and what they'll do with it, with the why.
Mhm.
Oh, the assessment. Okay. What will be done? So these questions are they're interesting because they're not very complex questions. They're very simple questions, but when we look at our teaching, it doesn't need to be all that complex in terms of what we're doing. But I think if a student ever asks, why am I learning this? We should have a good answer to that question. And the answer should not be because it's in the curriculum, right? We should revisit it for that because students want there to be meaning behind what they're learning, particularly this the new generation, the Gen Alpha. They are very used to quick answers to things with their being digital natives and on the internet and all of that. So there's this expectation that we have an answer to why they're learning it. And if we can answer that for ourselves, then that makes it a much richer experience with our teaching going forward. So thank you for engaging in that. None of these are right or wrong answers, but I designed these tasks to have the conversation so that you can really be introspective and look at your teaching and your classroom and what is working well and where you might want to look at things in a different way. Okay, so we are going to move into our last section here, which is going to be some really fun takeaways of things that you can do in your classroom very soon. A lot of the things that we're going to be looking at are not going to be a lot of prep work on your end. So, a quick recap on our first section. Hopefully, you have a solid understanding of the actual communication modes, those proficiency levels, and then the frameworks by each mode. And IPAs are your assessments, that your assessments are going to include all of the modes and to keep in mind that idea of the success criteria. So now we're going to be looking at comprehensible input. Now, comprehensible input is this idea that students understand the language that they're hearing and that they're reading. Not 100%, but it's just a little above their complete understanding because that is what helps them to move forward and to grow in their acquisition of the language. Now, typically when we think of the idea of comprehensible input, we think of listening and reading. And traditionally that's what it is, but I want to open that up that there is speaking and there's dialogue and there's writing and there's culture involved as well as some of I like this little image because it's the tools and the nuts and bolts of the language. So when we look at comprehensible input activities, it's not this idea of just listening and reading, which can be passive, but students really engaging with the language that they're understanding. So this is a document where we're going to look at 15 activities kind of quickly through. These 15 activities, I put them all together in a document for you. This document is in the Google folder that I shared with you, so you can get it right in there. And you want to make sure that you have it because I'm going to show you how you can use an AI tool with it. But we're going to go through this, but just be present, watching, seeing the examples because you have everything laid out in this document for you that's in the shared folder. Okay. So the first set of activities we're going to look at are for interaction and discussion. So these are really focused on communication in the classrooms and students engaging personally with the content and the meaning of the language. So the first activity we're going to look at is the idea of a picture talk. Now, a picture talk is really take any image, any picture, if it's culturally relevant and specific, that's helpful. But you just want to use it as a catalyst for conversation with students. So display the picture and lead a discussion in your language, asking questions, narrating the scene. This usually is about 10 or 15 minutes. Use pictures, as I said, that are culturally relevant, connected to students' interests, and keep it simple and gradually move up in complexity. So this is a picture. I spend my summers. I teach in the United States, but in the summer I teach in Nicaragua in Central America, and so these are students from my school in Central America. And so I always use this image with my students when we talk about family. Now, I ask my students, what do you think their relationship is to each other? And the thing is, they're not actually related, but the students don't know that. So they try to guess, oh, maybe they're sisters, they're cousins. Who's the older sister? Who's the younger sister? What do you think their names are? So we just start asking about, oh, so if they're cousins, does that mean that her mother and his father are siblings, or how does that work? Are any of them sisters? And so they're also engaging a traditional dance that they do in Nicaragua, but it's really just this opportunity to engage in language. You could use this for colors if they're very novice, talking about the colors of the dresses that they're wearing, but I use this particular one with family. So this is a picture talk. Again, all you need is a picture, not a whole lot of planning involved. Now, the next activity is PQA, which is personalized questions and answers. And this is where you want to personalize questions to students that are related to the topic and encourage them to respond in the target language. So, if you're talking about family, so then personalize it and say, do you have any cousins? Do you have any aunts? Do you have any uncles? Where do your grandparents live? So asking those kind of, when we say personalized, it's not like getting really personal about their lives, but it could be, what's your favorite food? Where do you like to go after school? What's your favorite sport? What kind of music do you listen to? Do you play an instrument? So, whatever topic you're on, bringing it to those personalized questions for students so that they are able to be involved in the discussion. And all of these activities, they can have a follow-up that could be those short writing that we looked at earlier. So after you've done a picture talk, so if we look back at the previous slide with the picture talk, after you've talked about this, that could be the short writing they do that day. Write about this photo for 3 minutes after we've talked about it. So you can always do other activities that go along with the other frameworks once you've done these, where it's introducing language to students. Now, the next one is special person interviews, and this was created by Bryce Hedstrom. He is in Denver, Colorado, and I had him on the podcast last year, so I got a lot of good information about special person interviews. But this is where you have one student who's sort of the focus in your classroom, and you do an interview with them about the topic that you are studying in class that week or that unit. And you usually start with simple questions they're going to understand, but then you expand that and you let they know what unit you're in. So it's no unexpected questions, and your students. Hopefully, you know your students well enough to know the questions you can be asking and the ones that are not appropriate to be asking, and which ones are getting too personal or not. But usually, we're talking about food or pastimes and different things like that. And it's really building classroom community. And so the idea is, as you're asking one student their opinions or these questions, then you open it up to the rest of the room. So you would say, like, so what's your name? And they say their name, and then you can ask, does anyone else have that name in the room? Does anyone have any family members with that name? Do you know any other people who have that name? So it's using it as a reason to engage with the language beyond, but it's a starting point. Because if you say what's your favorite food, and they say my favorite food is black olives, and ask in the room, does anyone not like those? Does anyone have a different type of olive that they prefer? Does anyone like apples? Oh, your favorite food is apples. Does everyone else like apples? How many people like apples? So it's just using their answers to make it a bigger conversation for the room, and you're able to stay in your target language and not go beyond, because their answers mean that it's language that they already can produce and understand. So the next activity is what we call a card talk. And I usually do this with index cards because you can fold them to make them like a table tent. And so students either write or draw pictures on there, and they just put it on their desk. And then you use that as your way of leading a class discussion. So it could be, what did you do last weekend? And some students might draw a soccer ball, some might draw a football, some might draw a car, some might draw a bike, some might draw running shoes, some might draw a guitar, some might draw food, some might draw a place where they worked. But they're all doing these different things on the weekend. And so you can go through and you can start with one student and say, oh, I see that there's a soccer ball on yours. So did you have a soccer practice? Did you just play with friends? Did you have a game? And they could say, oh, no, I had a game. And you can ask, oh, who won? Oh, you won? Then you open it up to the rest of the room and you can look around at their cards and you can see another one that has a soccer ball on it. And you can say, oh, did you also have a soccer game? Oh, you had a soccer practice. Oh, okay. Are you on the same team? So you're just using their pictures as a way of not having them automatically produce language, but you're able to contextualize based on looking around the room at what they have on their cards. And then again, after the fact, great short writing or an interpersonal activity based on what they have on there. So you can go back to the frameworks we did earlier and integrate it in there. Then weekend chats. This is something you do usually on a Monday or a Tuesday, and students discuss what they did over the weekend. So this might be some language they have, maybe not. Being able to put language in different time frames, that it's a completed action in the past as opposed to a present action. And so you're helping students to develop this. And even if they don't know all the forms of putting language in the past, you at least do that first person, that I did something. And then they can keep using that each week and doing that again. And a great follow-up would be your short writing after. And then we have a calendar talk. Now, my example here is in Spanish, but basically it starts with what's the date? And that's simple. But then we want to go beyond that, and on the side of that, I have, is there a game today? Is there a concert? Is there a special dinner? Is there some sort of party? Is there a practice for something? Is there a test or a quiz in another class? Is it someone's birthday? Is it someone in your family's birthday? Is it a friend's birthday? How old are they? So you can take all of this, just simply the date, and then move it into other directions as you're talking about that. And I also do weather and the time. And the other interesting thing is, and again, I teach Spanish, so my students will pull flags out of the different Spanish speaking countries. And then we will look at the maps of where those countries are. We'll look at what the weather is and what the time is, what the time difference between that country and where we are today. So that helps us to bring in the numbers. And when we look at the weather, we usually see it when we look them up in Celsius. My students use Fahrenheit, so we have to use numbers again to see the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit. So again, it's calendar talk, but let's look at someplace else in the world today. So now let's look at storytelling and narrative. Now, with storytelling and narrative, we have story listening. So this is where you tell the story in the target language. You want to use gestures and drawings and props to enhance the comprehension. But students aren't reading this, they're just listening to the story first, right? So that's what the whole idea of story listening is. Because there's also story asking, where that's where you start a story and students contribute answers to the plot. They name the characters, they say what's happening. But with story listening, you already have your story. So it's just about students understanding it. And a great follow-up would be one of your short writing. Then we have a write and discuss. This is definitely one of my go-tos in my classroom, is after you've done a whole activity in class, you've done a discussion, you've read something, you've watched something, you've even played a game. And then a write and discuss after is where you, the teacher, write a summary of it, and students contribute all the details to the summary. So after the class discussion, storytelling activity, write the summary, and you can write it on the board. I put it in a Google Doc and I have it projected so that I have it after. Some teachers just have students watch and contribute. I have them write it down as well so that they have it. And then I like to have it in the Google Doc because the next day I will project it and I will take some words out and students rewrite it and add in the words from yesterday when we had all contributed it together. The great thing about a write and discuss is, regardless of how complex the activity and the language was, when they contribute the answers to this in the end, it's very comprehensible to them. And then we have a clip chat. So this is similar to a picture talk where you use the picture to have the discussion and what's their relationship. A clip chat, this is an actual movie. And normally with a clip chat, you don't have sound. So you're just using the moving pictures to talk about what's going on. And you can pause it, ask questions about who's in there, and then play it again and keep going. What do you think is going to happen? And in the end, after or the next day, you could do a write and discuss, like we saw in the previous slide, where they help retell the story and you write it. You could use it as a short writing. You could have them do an interpersonal activity where they're the characters that were in the story that they just read, that they just watched in the clip. So there's all these ways of taking this and bringing it in. And this is, again, you just need to find the video. And it doesn't even have to be in your target language because they aren't listening to the sound. They're just, so you want it to be a video that clearly tells a story. And then when we look at reading and writing, so these activities are about reading and writing. So this one is one word at a time. And this is once you have a story, like say you did the clip chat and you have this story you've all created together, and you have students recreate the story one word at a time. So I like to use the small whiteboards with the markers. And so different groups of students will have it and they'll start the story with one word and then they pass it on to another group and they get it and they have to continue the story, but just one word. And you just keep passing it on to each group and they keep adding on one sentence until the whole story is told. When students are doing this, they have to pay very close attention to the parts of speech of the words that are there because, like, do they put an adjective after that word? Do they put a noun after that word? You know, they can't just put a random word. It has to tell the story, but also fit grammatically in the sentence. I was doing this workshop a couple of weeks ago and I was talking about this. And the teacher told me she does a version in her class where students throw a ball to each other. So instead of writing it, they throw the ball and tell the story that way, just one word at a time. So it's a way of doing it that's a bit more interactive. And then this is embedded reading. So when we talked about students reading earlier, and if it's a long text, it can feel very overwhelming to them. So what you can do is start with a very simple story. You know, Lotta wakes up at 7, she goes to school. And then you can then, okay, now let's look at a different version of that. Now they already know simply that she gets up at 7 and goes to school. So then you have this part of the story. So Laura wakes up at 7 in the morning. She gets up and eats bread with milk. She goes to school by bus. So it's the same thing that happened in the first part, but now we're adding details to it and making it longer. And then you can go even further and say Laura wakes up at 7 in the morning. She gets up quickly because she has class at 8. So anyway, you're adding more details on, but they still know that it's about Laura waking up and then going to school, right? So this is the whole idea of embedded reading. And then we have volleyball reading. Now, here, this does not involve a volleyball at all. It just means that students have either a CI novel, a short story, or just some sentences where one student reads in your target language and then the other student translates it. And then they read the next sentence in the target language and their partner translates it. So they're going back and forth between target language, target language, translated language. So that's why we refer to it as volleyball reading. I like to do this because it gives me a really good idea as I go around how well students are understanding the language by hearing their quick translations. And then we have draw the sentence. Students really enjoy this one a lot. This is where you have a story. And again, I use the whiteboards with the markers and the erasers. And students take one sentence from the story and they draw it. I tell them you have 1 minute, 2 minutes to draw it. And then their partner needs to find which sentence that was in the story that they drew based on the details that were in there. For students that are more novice level, I would give them a choice of 5 sentences from the story. More intermediate level students, I would say it can be anything from the chapter or maybe anything from an entire book if you're reading a book or a CI novel. But the putting the context in the picture of a drawing is really fun for students. Then we have a running dictation. So this is where you have usually 3 students, but you can do it with 2. But with 3 students, you have one student on one end of the room or outside, if you can go outside, and they have a list of sentences. Then you have a student 20, 30 feet away who has a board with blank lines on it. And then you have one student who runs between the student with the sentences and the student with the blank lines who is going to write those sentences. So the runner goes to the student with the sentences. The student with the sentences says the sentence. They read the sentence to the runner. The runner then runs to the student who's going to write them, says the sentence to them. They write it down. And if they need to break it up, and they can run back and forth as many times as they need until they get the sentence completely written down. If you do it with two students, you can just have one student who runs, reads the sentences themselves, and goes back, but they enjoy that because it's a lot of movement. And then the last one is dictation with a twist. Now, dictation, something we do often in our classrooms where we're practicing, but with here, you have students, you dictate a sentence, the students write it down. Again, works really well on those whiteboards. And then I say, change one thing in the sentence. So change, like if the sentence was, she bought a bag at the market, and so you got to change it out and say she bought something else at the market. And then you can go around and everybody can add something else in. So they're bringing in vocabulary, but also working with the language by listening and writing as well. So I wanted to show you just real quickly, if you put these all together, and again, they're all in the document I gave you. But this here is a quick story about a family that goes to a market and a little boy gets lost. And there's a fruit seller who finds him and brings him back to his family. So that's what it is. So he goes with his family, he gets lost, a fruit seller brings him back. So even in this short little story, you can have a complication and a solution. And I want to show you that you can take that story, and these are all the activities that you could do that we just talked about with that little story. So with the picture talk, you could show a picture of a market. With the personalized questions and answers, where do you buy fruit? What's your favorite fruit? Special person interviews, interview them not as themselves, but as a character in the story. Oh, you're Diego, the little boy who got lost. Or card talk, you could show different market items. The weekend chats, it's Saturday in the story. What do you do on Saturdays? Calendar talk, today is Saturday. What does the family do on Saturdays? The story listening, you could tell the whole story out loud before they even read it. The write and discuss, you could create a new version of the story where you're typing it in, writing it on the board. Or the clip chat, where you can find an authentic video of a market that looks like the one in the story and have them create the story going along with that. And then you could do the one word at a time where they retell the story, or you could do it with the ball that the teacher mentioned last week to me. The embedded reading, start with a small version. Diego goes to the market, he gets lost. That's essentially what happens. And then you do the versions where you're adding more on. The volleyball reading, one in the target language, one translating. Draw the sentence. So Diego sees the piñatas, so drawing that sentence from the story. The running dictation, you could just use the actual sentences from the story where the students are running between each other. Or the dictation with a twist, you could say, the family buys mangoes. So everyone writes that down, and you could say, write something else that they bought. So what you can see is you can take that little story with all of these activities and you can create an entire unit around that simple story with a lot of these activities that don't require a lot of prep. So I want to show you what you can do really easily to make sure that you can get all of these activities for your classroom is using an AI tool. ChatGPT is one a lot of teachers are using. Gemini is the Google tool. Claude is another version of ChatGPT. So what I typically do here is I will say, create a short story written for whatever your language class is, and I say, use these specifications. Now, this document with all of these prompts is in the Google folder. So all you have to do is copy the prompts from the document in the Google folder, put them in an AI tool, and you will have what you need. So fill in the language you want, the proficiency level, novice mid, novice high, the topic or unit theme, what vocabulary to include, any structures, or a cultural element. And then I always ask it to repeat vocabulary and structures, match the level, highly comprehensible, beginning, middle, end, add a twist and a fun detail. So again, there's a document that has all of these in there. You just cut and paste it in. And so that's what created the market story. And then I did that just in Arabic. And hopefully it came out pretty well. I think it made the story in Marrakesh, right? But it's a simple story following the same story of. So I used ChatGPT for this, and I just filled in Arabic, cultural element, and it created the story for me without having to create it on my own that way. And then once you have your story, then you take the CI toolbox document that's in the folder for you with all 15 of those activities, and you take this prompt, which is also in the folder. It says AI prompts in it. So you take your story, you put this prompt in there, you upload the CI toolbox document, and it will create all of the activities for you from the story all the way through the activities. So you have that all right in there for you. And then the last thing that, so here's all the AI prompts. So you'll see there's a document. This is the very document that's in there. So just cut and paste this right into any AI tool, and you'll have 2 weeks of a unit ready to go for you. And the last thing that you will see in the folder is a unit planning tool for you. Okay. And it's 5 pages long, but the first page is what are your activities that you like to do in your classroom? And then some CI activities. We just looked at 15 of them. So, what are 8 or so that you're likely to use? And you keep this. Every time you're going through a unit, you have your activities, these CI activities to keep them in mind. And then there is this sheet that just has all the frameworks we looked at. Whether it's the interpersonal speaking framework, the listening framework, you have it right there when you plan your lessons. You have your activities and the frameworks. And once you have them, you can do your success criteria. What's the content? Why are we learning it? To remind yourself of that. And then you can pull from your activities on the other sheet. These are what I want to do in this unit. And then the last sheet is to plan it out. So it's a place to bring all these activities that we looked at together in one place so that you can work through them. So all of these documents are in the Google folder, all the AI prompts, everything for this unit plan template. So I am so happy that I ended right on time. I was trying to plan this so well so that we could do this. But I'm Joshua Cabral, and I'm always open to answer questions, to go deeper. You can find me all over on social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, any of those. I'm WL Classroom everywhere. You can reach me, Joshua, at WLClassroom.com. And every Monday, we can also hang out on the podcast. And remember, I would love to have more Arabic teachers on the podcast. So please reach out to me if that's something you'd be interested in. But I would very much like to thank you for being a part of this and being rock star teachers who showed up for 3 hours on a Sunday to dive into all of this stuff. Excellent.
Thank you so much. And it's very exciting and
Give applause
interesting.
for everyone who is there too.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
really
Yes, definitely.
beautiful.
And just I want to remind everybody before I would leave it in the hands of Lena, just remember if we are running the raffle, please remember to complete this form. Otherwise, your name will not, I'm sorry, your name will not be included. So I leave it with the hand of Lena to go back and to, do you wanted to ask Ibtisam,
Yeah,
I think,
let's.
is with us just for 2 minutes if she can talk about.
I don't know.
Oh,
Ibtisam, are you there? If she said she will, but
I saw her
Yes,
name
I
all the
am
time.
I
here.
Yeah,
know
she is
you
here.
are there. Okay,
Yes.
Ibtisam, can you? أهلا وسهلا. Welcome, Ibtisam. She's the founder of Craft and
Craft and
Talk. Can you
Talk.
tell
Thank you
us? Yeah,
so much.
of
Yes,
course.
I'm trying to turn on my camera. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm offering one session for it can be used for music, darbuka, or for calligraphy. And so I put my information so you can reach out to me. And all the sessions will be, of course, online because all our artists are in the Middle East. And
Okay.
They
Sam,
can
yeah,
reach out to you, Ibtisam. Whoever wins this raffle, reach out to you and schedule time and day that it suits their classroom and their student. Otherwise, even if you are not, you did not win, it is beautiful to know what they do and offer, and maybe reach out and get. There is a budget for that. They can work out with you, so you will make it affordable, right, Ibtisam? I think we are losing her.
just we
She's
lost her
yeah.
probably. And I want to ask her, maybe can be offering something for us on the cultural day, so we can,
Yeah, it's
have her.
online. It's online, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it is with
yeah.
us. No, on our cultural day for the SCATC. Maybe we can talk to her
Yeah,
later.
that's
So
okay.
now let's see with the wheel. And before we go to the wheel, I wanted to remind you, please complete the evaluation. Hadia is going to put the evaluation before you leave or after you leave. It helps us a lot in planning for next session. Our next session is going to be when it's going to be in March. And in March, I think, 22nd, again, the same date that we have today. And correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to send you, save the date. And we are still debating between UDL or using the AI in your classrooms. So with the AI tools. So with that, let's see the wheel. And so do we have all the names,
Should
دكتورة هادية?
be right.
لا أستاذة إيمان، أنا حشاركه لأنه عندي الأسماء الكل.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
Let
gonna
her
stop.
write.
Stop.
منيح اللي
Okay.
ما وقف هلا. Okay.
يلا يا هادية. We are
طيب.
waiting.
Okay, click.
I'm just making it.
And the winner is
Ta-da! Oh!
ليالي.
هادي. ليالي.
okay.
شكرا شكرا.
Wonderful.
مبروك يا
So,
أستاذة
please send
ليالي.
your email to Dr. Hadia, so then Ibtisam can contact you.
Yeah, or she reach out Ibtisam. There is the number and the information on the flyer. So we want to say thank you so much, Joshua. I mean, you
Absolutely.
carried 3 hours beautifully, so engaging, a lot of
Thank you so
different
much.
ideas
So,
and strategies.
wish.
And I'm sure as me, as a educators and others, we actually ended with a lot of new ideas and refreshing old ideas. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful
Absolutely.
to
It was
have
my
you.
pleasure. I really appreciate your
you.
invitation, your hospitality, and it was wonderful spending time with everyone.
And again,
Thank
before
you
we
so much.
leave, if you can turn on your camera, please, we
Yeah,
can
we'll
have
take
the
a picture.
picture. We would like to, to have everybody to see all the faces. أهلا يا أستاذة سلمى. You are from where? You're talking.
Evaluation والcertificate بقلب evaluation. When you
So
finish the evaluation, you get a link. They say thank you for your evaluation, and then you click the link, and then you have to complete. You put your name as you want to be presented in your certificate, and be sure that your email, that one you can open and receive your PDF for your certificate.
So the key is to be able to complete the evaluation, right?
Yes.
So we have all these tricks.
دايما عندي مشكلة بيبعتوا لي انه ما وصلتنا الشهادة، فما حتوصلكم الشهادة اذا ما عملتوا الايفالويشن، فلازم تعملوه. وانا جربته واللينك شغال، فلازم تعملوا الايفالويشن. فهلا عندنا مثلا 34 حضور، فلازم يوصلني انا 34 ايفالويشن. الايفالويشن ما فيها اسماء، فانا ما بعرف الاسماء اللي عملوا الايفالويشن، بس if you did the evaluation that mean you receive your certificate. 1 2 3
هادية
صورة حلوة طلعوا انتوا على كاميرتكم. واحدة تانية مشان نتأكد انه إن شاء الله.
Joshua, get ready a picture.
في عنا صفحة تانية مين
سلامتك يا أستاذ مايك، سلامتك.
الله يسلمك.
أخت هادية أنا أيفل الإيفالويشن بس ما قال لي على الشهادة.
لا لازم بس تخلصي الايفالويشن يطلع لك لينك ويقول
I
لك
did
وبعدها في لينك you have to click on it. So
I
في
did
الصفحة روحي على الصفحة نفسها مفروض
هاي الصفحة أوكي.
في لينك تانية لازم تكليك on it وتفتح لك بس تكتبي لازم اسمك والإيميل أدرس.
أوكي thank you.
Can we put the link again, Hadia?
Yeah, please.
موجودة بالشات الآن.
نعم
تمام.
حطيته أنا مرة ثانية.
تمام.
شكرا جزيلا. صورة مرة ثانية.
يلا
كمان أنا
نعمل هيك.
بأكد على الشكر.
هعمل صورة مشان أوضح، هعملها سكرين شوت.
الصورة احنا عم نقول هلو مع السلامة. يلا هادية وارجع هادية. اوكي
يلا عم تحاول تاخذ صورة. سكرين
مع
شوت، اعمليها سكرين شوت هادية.
فيديو. يلا هي فيديو. إلى اللقاء.
إلى اللقاء.
Thank you Joshua so much and I'm gonna contact you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And شكرا للجميع ولحضوركم. We really appreciate that and save the date إن شاء الله.
أستاذة عمرت الفورم وكل شيء ولكن لم أحصل على الشهادة
لا لما بتكملي الايفالويشن حسب ما تولد بده يجيكي رابط
وإجوا
اوكي بتضغطي على الرابط ومن الرابط بيعطيكي الشهادة.
بيعطيكي
بتدخلي اسمك بيعطيكي
فول نيم وبيجيكي ايميل تفتحي عليه ببين عليك.
اوكي.
عندك 3 خطوات. الخطوة الأولى تكملي الايفالويشن، الثاني خطوة بيجيكي الرابط بتضغطي على الرابط، الخطوة الثالثة بيجيكي بتضيفي اسمك، بداية اسمك والاسم الأول والاسم الثاني وبيوصلك إيميل بالشهادة.
نعم أنا وصلتني.
طيب عظيم. شكرا أستاذة أيام.
ثانك يو لكم. يا الله قديش انا انبسطت بهالمحاضره جميله وشكرا لكم والله. واختي ايمان شكرا لك، انا انبسطت كثير ولما سامي بعثت لي الصوره انبسطت.
الله يخليكي. نتمناك يلا تعالي زوري سامية وتعالي احضري معنا يوم الكلتشر العربي ان شاء الله سيصلكم مشان من اجل اليوم الكلتشر العربي. ونحن ما تكلمنا عن شيء مهم، يلي بحب كمان يشارك باخر محاضرة ويكون هو participant. أستاذة هيام يمكن تشتركي ونحن بنعمل يعني بتقدمي انه بدك تقدمي جزء من المحاضرة او محاضرة ويشتغلوا معاكي يعني بنتابع معك لحتى تعرضي بالاخير اذا عندك الرغبة، او اي استاذة سنة استاذة لمياء اي شخص عنده افكار جديدة بحب يعني يكون مشاركنا فيها. آخر محاضرة بالنسبة لنا في شهر إن شاء الله ستكون في شهر 6 يكون هي مشاركات من النجوم القادمون إن شاء الله لمن يعرف.
شكرا لحضرتك والله بشرفنا ويعطيكم ألف عافية. يعني كل المحاضرات دكتورة هي رائعة، بس اليوم طول ما أنا عم بحضر تطلع براسي هيك دعاية مصرية بتقول مش حتقدر تغمض عينيك. يعني هو ولا لحظة كان فينا نرمش عيننا. عن جد شكرا لحضرتكم، يعطيكم ألف عافية.
أيوة الله يخليك ويحفظك. هلا بسم هذا الأمر الأستاذ مجدي